WION's Lucy Hu, who joins us from Brussels on this big breaking story. Lucy, Boris Johnson back at the helm. It's great news for Britishers, but still UK faces a very tough fight against this disease.
Well, I think it's great news for some people, and for others it's not. I mean, his critics were saying that the speech just delivered on the steps of Downing Street made no acknowledgement of the perceived failures of the British government so far in the early stages of the crisis, the delayed reaction to putting down a full lockdown, which some people say has cost thousands of lives, for failing to procure adequate amounts of personal protective equipment for health workers, with critical shortages being reported at the moment. But of course, for others, it is great to see the Prime Minister back and in good health after he spent 3 nights in intensive care and a week in hospital. In that speech delivered just a few moments ago, he said, he talked about the severity of his symptoms, how he had been, really consumed by the illness, but was now in good health and raring to go. For him, moving forward, he said he was desperate to reopen the powerhouse British economy, but was not willing to do so if it would continue to put the British people at risk. So he's asking people to stay patient and keep enduring the lockdown measures for a further period before he can start looking forward to phase 2. He also thanked his deputy Dominic Raab, who has been standing in for Boris Johnson in the 3 weeks that he's been out of action.
Absolutely, Lucy. Situation is still grave in UK, isn't it? More than 150,000 people are still infected in the country. More than 20,000 people have lost their lives. Certainly the UK is in the midst of this battle against the coronavirus. But looking across Europe now, and countries which have been hardest hit by this pandemic, that is Italy and Spain, have started easing some norms, some lockdown measures that were in place.
Yeah, particularly Spain, which for the last few weeks has really been the epicentre of the virus. That death toll in the country on Sunday was 288, falling below 300 for the first time since the middle of March. So a really significant milestone for Spain. And for the first time yesterday, children under the age of 14 were allowed to play outside their homes in the fresh air, again for the first time in 6 weeks. That's as Spain starts to look forward to phase 2. We understand that from the middle of May onwards, there will be a gradual releasing of lockdown measures, with those plans due to be announced by the Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez in the coming days. In Italy, we have had the lockdown exit strategy unveiled last night by the Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte. We understand that from May the 4th, some non-essential businesses will continue to be allowed to reopen. Building sites, parks and recreation grounds will be allowed to reopen. And from the 1st of June, it's possible that bars, restaurants and hairdressers will be allowed to reopen as well, with schools staying closed, however, until September. So for Italians who've been living under the strictest of lockdown measures for 7 weeks now, the longest running lockdown in Europe, this is a major milestone, some light at the end of the tunnel, as again the numbers continue to be encouraging in Italy.
Right. We certainly hope that Italy and Spain can come back and resume life as normal. But the big news today is certainly Boris Johnson. Once again, one final question on him. Boris Johnson, great to see him back at 10 Downing Street. But like you were mentioning, some critics have been critical of his government's handling of the coronavirus pandemic so far. Boris Johnson has, however, claimed that his administration has prevented the overburdening of the NHS in that country. But the death toll in UK certainly is climbing every day.
Yes, it is. I mean, at the start of the crisis, officials said it would be a win if deaths remained under 20,000. But unfortunately, over the weekend, we crossed that milestone. I mean, it is true that the health system has not collapsed under this, and we've had the establishment of some new hospitals, such as the Nightingale Centre and the Excel Centre in London, which at the moment isn't at full capacity. It still has available beds. So as far as the government is concerned, that is a win. But what is levelling heavy criticism at the government at the moment is the lack of personal protective equipment, with really critical shortages being reported in some hospitals dealing with the worst of this crisis. this. The government has been trying desperately to procure more PPE, and there was, for example, a procurement from Turkey last week, but the plane was delayed by several days, which became something of a farce. And, you know, certainly officials are looking to ensure that health workers have everything that they need, particularly with regards to other specialist equipment, such as ventilators. Boris Johnson, in his speech delivered just now, said there were enough ventilators for everybody that required one. But the other criticism being levelled at the government, it was too slow to impose the lockdown, and it was that crucial period at the beginning of March that could have saved thousands of lives, people are saying. We understand that the virus is likely to have been in the UK from as early as January, and had the British government started to make the plans that it needed to start making from that point, as was the case in other European countries such as Germany, perhaps that death toll could have stayed under 20,000.
Absolutely. Lucy, thank you so much for joining us and giving us all these updates on not just UK's battle against the coronavirus, but how Europe is also slowly easing norms on the lockdowns that have been put in place as far as coronavirus is concerned. But Boris